My name is Conrad Gerroir, son of Jean-Baptiste Gerroir and Mabel Gerroir. I was born the 21st of November 1917, and this is the home in which I was born, where I lived, and it's kind of a coincidence to have a native become parish priest of his own native parish. There's a quote in scripture somewhere where it says, "A prophet is never accepted in his own town." It has happened that I'm parish priest of the village in which I was born, brought up, etc.
This house here, how old would you say it is?
This house was built from a house that was here before, and if you look at the trimming, especially the ceiling there, on the sides, that wide trimming, see it there? Is of long ago. It's pretty old. That would be about 225 years old since it was made, which would be trimmings that were in the old house that was here before. So the old house that was here before was built for Geoffrey Leblanc. Geoffrey Leblanc was a sea captain, was married to a foray. Her name was Mary, and he was a sea captain. He also had a brigantine built for himself, a model of which is in the kitchen. If you want to go and have a look now, have a quick peep at it. The model is above the doorway.
What was the name of it?
They call it the MLB for Mary Leblanc. You see it? It's half model.
Yeah.
You found it, good. So he was living here about 1850, I suppose. And he was a sea captain and had that particular brigantine built and was able to sail from many ports of the world across the Atlantic, go to Europe. The tonnage of it was about 350 tons.
Was it built here?
It was built on the shore on the other side of that fish shed there. So it was built. And before they would build a boat of that size, they would also build a forge. They would have forge built to have the iron they would need for the riggings, especially putting up the sails and the stays that you need to steady the masts, etc. They would need a forge to make things to fit. So that forge still exists. It's the shed we have behind the house here. And then he died, or he died first, and then his wife died. And in around 1900, my father purchased the property. So he took the forge that was at the seashore and he dragged it up there. He made a storehouse with it. And he demolished the big house they had and he built this one out of the material of the old one. So the age of this house is up close to 100 years. 1900 with 97. What else do you want to know?
Who were your grandparents?
The grandparents were, well, my genealogy, that's what you want there. Let's see if I can find it. But I'll give it by heart as much as I can. I may not be able to give you the dates by heart.
Oh, that's fine.
My ancestors who came from France, they came from Loudun, Loudun, I think. Loudun, France, is a little bit to the interior. I don't suppose that they came directly from Loudun, but they assembled in Loudun, and then were taken to a seaport in France, and they came by boat to North America, or to Acadia. This was about 27, 28. And the man who came along was Francois Gerroir. And wife was Jean Aucoin. Now I don't know whether they got married before they came or after they came, but it was at about the same time that they came that they were married. And they settled in an area today known as Tupperville. Tupperville is on the Annapolis Basin, not too far from, let's see now, not too far from Annapolis, Florida itself, where there's a generating plant, a plant that generates
Tidal power.
electricity with the fall of water. So Tupperville is the name of the place, but at that time they called it the Gerroir Village. And they were there from 1646 or something like that to 1713, and then the English came and took over that particular area, but the Acadians were tolerated there until 1755. So they were there for over 100 years, and they had quite a group of people. I would say the population might have been like 350 people, persons. And then they had a family, but I'll just pick one because I'm giving you a direct genealogy to myself. And his name was Jacques. And Jacques married, I think, a Godet. And they had a family. And I picked one, was Pierre. We call him Pierre number one. And Pierre married very likely a Doiron, a woman by the name of Doiron, and they had another son, and they call him Pierre. So you have Pierre number one, Pierre number two, and Pierre number two spent most of his early life in Petit de Gras. I was sent to Petit de Gras to be passed from Petit de Gras, and I was kind of scared. He would call me a mangeur de rate, a fish bone eater. Then I found out that my ancestors had been there before, so I'll have to swallow my own pride. And yeah, all right, so Pierre number two lived in Petit de Gras and married Cécile de Chavery. And they had a family, and one son I picked is Jean-Baptiste. And Jean-Baptiste moved and came on this island. This is Creighton Island. Across the harbor, the breakwater leaves Creighton Island. And they settled in about that area, somewhere in the middle of the island. And he married a girl among Landrys who had come at about the same time and settled at that end of the island. So Jean-Baptiste, son of Pierre, number two, married Gertrude Landry. And they live where Digdon used to live. Again, there again is that island there, on the wooded part there. And there's kind of a cleared area on that side of the picture on the island. That's where Digdon used to live. That's where my ancestors, Jean-Baptiste Gerroir, married to Gertrude Landry, lived. And they had a large family. So I picked two now because my mother stems from the same persons as my father. My mother was a Gerroir, my father was a Gerroir. Am I speaking loud enough?
I think so.
Yes.
All right. So I picked two. One would be Benjamin, and the other one would be Michael. From Michael came my mother's people. Michael was married to Boudreau, and they had a son called Polycarp. Polycarp married a Delory from Tracadie, and they had a son called William. And William married and had a daughter called Mabel, and Mabel would be my mother. Now I go back to Jean-Baptiste and Gertrude Landry, and under Benjamin we had Désiré By. Désiré, who married a Pont, and they had a son called Jean-Baptiste, who is my father. So they are on equal lines. My mother is more distant than my father from their original parents. It was Jean-Baptiste would be the common father of my father and my mother. and then they had a son called Conrad Gerroir, but we had a large family. We were 14. There's only 4 left living. There's Nancy, just went out. She's a nun, fille de Jésus. And there's Sophie, was married and has a family. You know Sophie Sampson? Would be Brian Sampson's mother.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then I have a brother who's a Capuchin. This picture is up in the corner there, way up. He's a Capuchin, the Order of St. Francis. And that's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all that's left. Should I continue? What else should I tell you now?
Oh,
You can help me.
yes. You were talking about Crichton Island. You were talking about your ancestor Jean Baptiste. What can you recall, or what do you know about what existed on there as far as like a habitation, as far as like sustaining a community?
By looking at other stories from that my sister having trouble get away.
No.
Looking at there's place where French people came to settle, you'll find they settled on islands instead of settling on the mainland of Great Britain. For instance, this where the first inhabitants lived was on that island before they settled. West Ayrshire, they had no road, there was no West Ayrshire. And then you go to Port Hood. It's on Port Hood Island that they settled. There's still some people living on it. Then you go to a Shetty Camp, it's on Shetty Camp Island that they settled. There's very few people left living on it now. And then we'll forget about St. Paul's Island. It's way out to Cabot Strait there somewhere. But then you have Scattery Island of Monadue. That's where people settled. And you find that they'd rather settle on islands instead of settling on Terra Firma, on the mainland, because they could observe more easily the going and the coming and going of people, or of other people they didn't know, you know. It's about that time in 1650 that the Canadian martyrs were martyred by the Hurons in mid-Canada. And the news of that spread, and when these people left France, and not long after they left France, they heard about how they were treated by the Iroquois, I suppose. So they were kind of not too sure. It was better to keep that distance from them, you know. So they would settle on islands. Is that something you're looking for?
Yeah.
Now, how many people were living on Gerroir-July Island? About 20 families. There would be Landrys, there was Boudreaux, there were Poiriers, there were Terriers. There was Creighton at the end. Creighton wasn't an Acadian, but he was English-speaking likely. And there was Digdon, and there was and yeah, there were quite, I would say about 20 families. Who's this one? Is he one of your gang?
No. Do you have any knowledge of the whereabouts of the Crichton and Digdon families, where their origins were?
Where they came from?
Originally, yeah.
They came from across the bay. That would be Queensport. But another good source of information is George and MacDonald book. Have you seen that book? From Jan van Zarver?
No.
That one is revealing. Is that one of your men?
No.
Come in.
No, he left. He said he'll be back in a little bit. I think he was selling fish or something. I think Jason Dory.
Oh, Jason. Didn't look like him at all. You know him.
Yeah, he's only.
He's Vinny's son. Okay, did I answer your question?
The
No.
Crichton and Digdon family.
Well, I was just going to say there's another source of information. It's, the book is George and MacDonald. George and MacDonald. It's the name of the book. And they give the genealogy of the Digdons, of the Nicole. No, Nicole was another name, they were not Catholic. But Mrs. Digdon was a Nicole. this side of the harbour. Yeah, you better ask questions so you'll be more in line with what you want.
Okay, getting off topic of Crichton Island, and more in line with the community, because you guys grew up here
Yeah.
and not on the island. What do you remember of West Irish at? What sticks out in your mind, like buildings or?
Well, there's usually the government recognizes some of these buildings. They call them heritage buildings, you know. One of them that, you know where Joe Muri lives? There's a White House on top of the hill there from his place. Jeanette would have been brought up, Jeanette is Joe's wife, would have been brought up in that house. But that house belonged to Jeanette's father, and then going further back it belonged to Desiree, and then going back further it belonged to Desiree's father-in-law, because and his name was Gilbert Pont. Gilbert Pont had a daughter, Mary Jane, who married Desiree. Desiree had sons. He had my father and he had Jeanette's father, and there were quite a few girls too. And that's what it works. But that house is pretty old. Belonged to a sea captain. His name was Captain Gilbert Pont. And all these Ponts are related. Even Ernest, who died not too long ago, there would be related to these same Pont. I'm related, so I'm related distantly to Ernest. So I'll tell you a little bit more about Gilbert. So Gilbert Pont lived in that house and had the barkentine, brigantine and barkentine, pretty much the same. The body of the vessel is the same. It's just the way they put their masts and sails that differentiate it, made it different. So he built a barkentine, and he died at the age of 47. Anyhow, he must have been master of ships that belonged to companies. They undertook a voyage from PEI with a load of grain for London, England. Everything went well until he got to mid-Atlantic, and they met with a storm and they lost their rudder. So they were adrift there, unable to control it in any direction, but able to know where they were at noon. They were able to bring the sun down and get the latitude and longitude. What did you call that instrument? But anyway.
Sundial?
Sundial, yeah, it could be something like that. And my father told me the story, and kind of enjoyed it. And then I was upstairs in the attic. He had charts, marine charts. One of them was a line from PEI going to mid-Atlantic, a whole lot of zigzags, and he didn't go any further. So I presume that's the chart that he kept. And when they left the vessel, I guess they took everything that could be removed. So a Yankee clipper, that would be a fast-sailing vessel that would carry mail from New York to England, came across this vessel adrift, and they took the crew on board, and they blew up the vessel because it was a menace to navigation to leave an object like that under no control at all in mid-Atlantic, so they blew it up. And what's interesting about the whole thing is that they were presumed dead. They left and they got no news from them. There was no telephone, no telegraph, and there was many things that we must forget that we're accustomed to, you know, they didn't have. Send a letter took a long time before you get it. So they presumed they were dead, and they had a funeral service for Gilbert Pont and his crew. And that might have been eight or nine people. On Christmas Eve, they appeared back on the scene. They had found a way back to America by another clipper that carried mail, and they made it home. Now today you would fly, and today you would take a train. All those things didn't exist in 1856 or 57. You must put that when you speak of those years, you must go back and remember that they didn't have all the luxuries we have today for travel or for writing or sending messages. May I continue? So they buried them, and that was it. They didn't bury them, but they had the funeral service where they showed up on Christmas, fully alive. Now, that would be, I'm telling you this in order to show that that house would have some importance. That if they would ask that it be listed as a heritage property, I guess the government would. And there are inconveniences, and as far as that is concerned, is that you cannot make any change to the house. You cannot do anything on the house unless you have special permission from the government. So,
And no significant changes.
so another few houses. You're interested in houses. Another one is not far from the church. There's a big white house there, bread and breakfast. Emile Mouchette, bed and breakfast. And then further on, there's another building called Knights of Columbus Hall. Now I'll speak about the bed and breakfast run by Maurice Leblanc and Jean-Guy Duguay. I think it's the name of the two fellows come from Moncton. And it was built about 1870 as a convent for brothers. And the brothers were the Frères des Écoles Chrétiennes, who had been invited by the bishop and parish priest to conduct a school. So they were teachers. Did you visit that house? You go to the attic, it's kind of a prayer room. The whole attic is open. There are still benches straight back. You seem to say that you were in the building. Did you?
Well, my mom was. She said, she told me.
Who's your mother?
Anne, Delore.
What was she before? Was she
was a
Raymond
Samson. She was from Lord
Samson from Lardoise? Lardoise.
Mm-hmm. Or Rockdale, actually.
Was she with you this afternoon, or was that your mother?
That was my mother.
It was Donna. All right. So they came, and they taught school for a while, and especially they taught navigation. In those days they had a lot of sea captains, captains that would sail these ships overseas, and didn't have all the equipment that you have today now. To keep an average speed of the vessel, they would measure it by dropping a chip, take a watch, drop a chip, follow that chip up to another spot on the deck of the vessel, that being measured. See how long it took to do that. They were able to come to some average of speed, but you can imagine the force of the current, the Gulf Stream and all that, how it could be deviated from having the true picture. But anyhow, that's what they taught navigation, and these fellows made it overseas and would reach London and would go through the Strait of Gibraltar and reach Italy. Amazing what they could do. And then there were shipbuilders too, they would build these. One was built at the point over there called the Dominic. One there called Marie Leblanc, and another one close to Junior, it was called the Arishat West. And there were many others built also in the Port Royal area. And some in Arishat, I presume. So they had a school, and it was nice to teach them some navigation.
How long did that school exist?
Eh?
How long did that school exist?
It existed until the Department of Education under Charles Tupper insisted that these teachers undergo exams each year in English, oral exams in English, so that they could qualify for some kind of a pension towards their salary and also acquire a pension for the school. And these, being French from Quebec, refused to accept to pass exams in English. And that's the end of it. And then an old fellow by the name of Dougal Boyle, where the cooperative store is in West Ayrshire, that was the first store was an ordinary house, in which Dougal Boyle lived in, and he had a lot of land in that area. There were many people living on land that belonged to Dougal Boyle. He took over and had a school. The school was not far from the glebe house, about 100 yards from the glebe house towards Carl Forgeron, where Carl lives. Carl. Do you know any of his dead children? Carl Forgeron's children.
Oh.
But it's not far. Between Carl Forgeron, Edmund Forgeron, and the Glebe that there was a school. Dougal Boyle was the teacher. And Dougal Boyle was, anything that was done by his parishioners, he could do it. He was Justice of the Peace, he was a surveyor, he was a school teacher, and as far as getting permission of permits to get married, he would furnish all that, you know. So he was involved in all kinds of things. And that was a school for boys. And of course, when the Frères de l'École Chrétienne came this way, there was already a school for girls. And that would be the building of the Knights of Columbus, not all of what you have now there, but the main building there, the extension divided there, you can't forget about that, but the other one. And they were the Sisters of Notre Dame. And that convent, the sisters left in 1895 and went to Antigonish and founded Mount St. Bernard. See, West Tarishat is older than those institutions in Antigonish. Even St. FX was founded in Arishat and then continued in Antigonish. So in 1895, the sisters left, and I don't know who really taught school to the girls. The whole thing must have been re-examined, and I don't think that the two after the sisters left, I think the girls and the boys used to go to school together under a new school system of some sort. And that would be more or less under Charles Tupper. That would be in the 1905 or 10. Possibly you might get answers to this. Let's see if she has any good schools. Anyway, you can refer to this. She should speak about schools. It's easy to find.
Well, as far as schools in the community, there was also a school in Port Royal.
Later on, yeah, each district was able to form.
And Janvers
That's
Island.
after the sisters left and after the Frères de l'École Chrétienne left. The distance after that each district was given. I'll give you a preface, typist preface, geography, the first settlers, missionaries, migration to the United States, present industries, climate, religion, education, page 8. See, when you get old, your fingers are not as smart as when you were young. You shake and you fail to turn the page. It doesn't seem to impress you at all. Let's see now. It's 8. Education. I'll read this, The very first step in learning was made a short time after its first settlement by the missionary priests of Canada or France, who taught the people how to read and write. Mr. Jean Geoffroy from France gave private lessons to young class in the early days of the colony. The first building wherein public teaching was made was of very small dimension and was placed near the shore, a little below where the public school now stands, close to Lavange's property likely. The pupils were, however, at a great disadvantage, as no French instructor would be procured, and the children could not understand English. Thus they were fortunately or unfortunately unable to make much progress during the first years. Reading, writing, and arithmetic was taught, while French classes were carried on in private homes, and especially to the girls. Mr. Nicholas Doyle was the first teacher. Mr. Mouchette of France, whose business after many years became the largest and most important in the village, and Mr. John Fuller were among others who sowed the first seeds of education. Now Mouchette would be the one who had the big white house, which has a bed and breakfast. And Fuller, that may be the Fuller brush man. You know, came from the valley, that fellow.
There were Fullers in Arishat.
Fullers. History of West Arishat, now they go to a present school system. So, I better keep on reading. It's more informative than I thought. Soon the building was too small for the numerous attendance of pupils, and another apartment had to be provided. A more suitable site was selected, and a large and appropriate building was erected where the glebe house now stands. That's the one I was mentioning to you. The tactful, intelligent, energetic young Acadian boys desired to get acquainted with the principles of navigation and were provided with a grade A teacher, Mr. Dougal Robert Doyle, the one I was talking to you about, who during 20 years conducted school at West Ayrshire, being thorough with the theory. At an early age, these young men set to work, and as early as the age of 20 and 25, they commanded vessels into all ports of the continent. Very young. Smart, these fellows. Let's see if I can find anything important. Sometimes between 1855 and 1860, on the site of the present one at Ayrshire, a convent was erected, and Congregation Notre Dame nun from Montreal came to teach. They taught, besides the public school course, music, principle of the Roman Catholic Church, and home duties, paying special care to training in good moral habits. In 1862, when the parish of West Ayrshire was organized, a convent, which is today the public school, the time that this woman wrote, which is Knights of Columbus today, was built by the parishioners, and upper store was dedicated for their religious services until the required means could be procured to erect a suitable building. The lower story was occupied as an educational institution by the Reverend Mothers. The same year, through the influence of Reverend Hubert Gerroir, the zealous and patriotic as well as first priests of West Ayrshire, the Brothers of the Christian School came, but remained only 3 years, teaching at first where Captain W. E. LeBlanc now lives, and then below the hill at Mr. Mouchette, now my home. Now, Captain W. E. LeBlanc, you know where the convent was in West Ayrshire? You know where Jean Forgeron lives, that with Dave Forgeron's mother, the principal of the school.
Down Forgeron Road?
No, this is close to the church. And speaking of
The church, the
Dave,
street behind the church. You're
but
talking about
it's
the
the
road.
main street, but the house would be very close, very close to the church.
Right across the road.
That's where there was a house there and the post office, and the whole thing went up in flames. That was where Captain W. E. LeBlanc lived. And down the hill is where the Mouchettes live.
That used to be a store at one time.
He's following. I thought you were asleep, but he's following. A few young men left with them to consecrate themselves as brothers of that mission founded by the glorious St. John Baptist de la Salle. So the brothers left 3 years after the parish was founded, they left. The Christian brothers having left, the boys had to continue their work with Mr. Boyle, now being allowed to attend the convent school. All right, not now, but not. The Christian brothers having left, the boys had to continue their work with Mr. Boyle, not being allowed to attend the convent school. Before long, the public schoolhouse was burnt. In order to continue the boys' classes, a building was bought by the section and placed on a lot of land a few yards east of the church. So they built another school not far from there, which would be in the area of Andon Forgeron. So the present school system. In the fall of 1895, the Congregation Notre Dame nuns returned to their mother house at Montreal, from where they never came back, to general sorrow of the community. Never came here, but they went to Antigonish. Subsequently, the building was hired by the school section, the convent, and turned into a school, graded school with 2 departments. It had remained thus ever since, and been under the management of energetic teachers who have done much towards the advancement of the county by inspiring young population with high aspiration for education. Each year, a number of pupils are turned out as teachers who usually are in the neighboring sections. May we stop there? So you get an idea what was going on in education.
Yeah, and you were talking about some of the famous buildings and that.
Oh yeah, but those were the buildings, those 2 buildings. Now, in age, Bodie's Point would be interesting, but it's not as old. All right, I'll tell you how Bodie's Point came about. It seemed that the Jersey people used to come here and set up fish businesses. Robbins and Jones. So Bodie came and he settled at that end of the Arnes on the point. You know what Bodie's point is? Where Joe, Samson, and Ann live.
Big house there over in the
So and that house was built the same year that this second house was built by a fellow by the name of Laurent Murie, was a carpenter. So he was building houses. Of course, they would have a house like this put up for $150. It was at least a shell. Today I don't know how many thousand it takes. But of course, money has lost its value today. All around, it was much cheaper than what it is now. Of course, your salaries too would be much lower. So, Bodie came and he set himself up as a place where people could sell their fish, and then he would equip himself in such a way that instead of paying in money, he would give them goods from a store. Bartering, is that what you call bartering? And still you've got a while. And I don't know what happened. His wife died. I don't know if he was the reason for the death of his wife, what happened, but he shot himself eventually. So at times they speak of that place as if it had ghosts. Have you heard that? Ghost stories with the building. But I don't think. It's a beautiful spot, you know, it's elevated. You can see all of Port Royal and the islands. Beautiful area there.
beautiful home.
Beautiful home. But it was sold for about 15,000, you know. But it was going to ruins. So it was purchased by Joe and Ann, and they're the ones who planned the refurbishing of the inside, and also on planning to solidify the exterior, make it watertight. And I noticed that it was for sale for $259,000. And I suppose it's worth that, you know, compared to the place it's at and the size of the building, the area, and the swimming pool connected with it. I've seen that in a leaflet that appears once in a while. Houses that are for sale, relators putting these properties on. So if he did most of the work and was able to get it for 15,000, sell it for 259, it's a business that other people should get involved too. People make a living at that, at purchasing old buildings and remodeling them and reselling them. Speak of industry, I could mention that. Is there such a meeting pretty soon on the possibilities of industries for Richmond County? Is there an association?
Concerning the gas, you mean? The gas line to point out?
No, but it has more directly with Richmond. Is there an association in Ayrshire?
Development over there.
All right.
My brother's in charge of it.
Is that the one that's having a meeting? But let's see now. Another one that I see is somewhat doing the same thing is Starkey. You know Starkey? You know Starkey?
Mm-hmm.
He buys houses, refurbishes them. Of course, he didn't do that towards his daughter-in-law, Danielle, did he? You know what Danielle is?
Mm-hmm.
Daughter-in-law, that would be Edwina's daughter. Her name is Danielle. Am I wrong?
Oh, you're right.
You're right. But she's kind of retired, but then he purchased another one here. That's the house over there with blue trimmings. You see it from where you're sitting? Oh, your window is closed. You put out the most important part of your shows outside. But he purchased that property there. And where did he purchase it from? Collins. You know the Collins who were there? That Mrs. Collins was in charge of the Ayrshire Hospital. And they live in East Lake Ainsley now. And think they had purchased it and they moved out, and that maybe Starkey, somebody else. But there was a fellow married to a pity bar. He was a minister in religion, Mr. Wilson, I think, stayed there for a while. I don't know if they purchased it or not. But the real purchase that was made is lately by Starkey, and he sold it to Forbes, formerly from the schools. Was that a sign that you know about it? Forbes? Related to Petit Pas, married to a Petit Pas. And he's telling people how to make wine and liquor, and there's a secret. You find that business is slow. I said, oh, well, everybody knows how to make wine. But anyhow, he's married to a Petit Pas. And that's the person to whom Starkey sold that building. And I guess it's a solid building. To it's built, it's used. And those buildings, that would be a heritage building. Old, the people who lived in it. One of the descendants of those who live in it is Steve White. Steve White is the expert on genealogies at University of Moncton in Moncton. His ancestors came from there, and in order to get a job in the United States, Massachusetts, they thought that they changed their names would be a help. So LeBlanc turned into White. And he was born in Wayland, Massachusetts, the only son very likely of that family. He was kind of pretty clever. We're told that anybody who has money, who has brains, one or the other, can make it at Harvard. Harvard is in Cambridge, Massachusetts, so that's where he went, and he took corporate law. Then he found out that his name was not White but LeBlanc, so he spent most of the summer months, vacation months in Ayrshire on the island here, going through church records, developing a system of putting down genealogies, and of course the department in Moncton was already in action, and it was an old priest who was in charge. His name was Anselme Chasson, Capuchin. And he got to be 65, he was told that they would need somebody else. 65, I guess, you're finished as a school professor. So he suggested to them that this fellow from Wayland, Massachusetts, a graduate of Harvard, would be a good choice. So he was appointed there. Now, I presume that the federal government gives a lot of money to pay for the salary or whatever it's arranged. And he's the expert on genealogies, especially on Acadian people. Sometimes they come here and they want to do it on their own. It would be better to go to that fellow and be able to put you right where.
He probably has a computer now.
So now he's on the eve of letting loose. He was writing an encyclopedia. That means many books on genealogies pertaining to the Acadians or those related to Acadians. It might be MacDonald's, but still could trace their origin in part to Acadia, to the Acadians. Now, I don't know how you would dispose of such an encyclopedia. You could sell copies to people, but today you could sell it possibly to the internet and have a good sum of money for it, and then it's finished. If you want to go know your genealogy, well, you can work at it through the internet, or I don't know. Have you any suggestions to make how you could place it or dispose of it?
I don't think it would be too hard to dispose of something like that. There's not really many books on just Acadian genealogy.
Yeah.
So something like that would definitely sell.
I would sell it to the government, likely. I don't know. But all along, if we had any question about genealogy, you write to him, he would answer. Lately, answers are not forthcoming, meaning that he's on the verge of launching his encyclopedia. That would be possibly 9 or 10 books on Acadian genealogies, with stories. C'est plate lire de la généalogie, ça va une histoire ici et là. You understand some French? Any other question? I might be leading you astray.
No, you were talking about the West Ayrshire Co-op, and they're celebrating their anniversary this year and you talked about Mr. Doyle that had started it. What specifically do you know about the beginnings of it? Was that did it all start with just one meeting, or what do you know
The
about the
co-op-
beginnings of the
the
Irish
co-op
Co-op,
store?
West Irish Co-op?
It was a time they formed study clubs. And I guess one of the first things they had was a buying club in Ayrshire somewhere, of which Irving Latimer was involved in it. Now, Irving Latimer would be Teddy Latimer's father. Are you following me? And he kept the lighthouse, the small entrance of the Ayrshire Harbour lighthouse was kept by a person, and it was Irving Latimer who was keeping that lighthouse. And they had other farmers, possibly Pat Terrell. Old Jack Terrell might have been a member. That would be Jack's father, Pat's father. You know Pat Terrell? Pat Terrell, little short man, Knights of Columbus. He's dead now. So they had this studying club, all right, and it meant that anybody who needed feed. My father used to keep cattle, and he would buy possibly half a ton of feed or something like that, horses, cows, and he used to purchase it through this buying club. But then, Father Briand was in the area, and he was trying to form a cooperative store. And I remember it was about the time that they were to start selling. My father had already put in his order with the buying club in Ayrshire, and Father Briand was displeased that one of his parishioners would be purchasing elsewhere than from the store they were about to form. So I'm giving an idea how it started. So they would have had quite a few sessions, and they had a buying club, meaning that a certain person in the village would order goods and resell those goods, for possibly 6 months, something like that, until they were able to purchase the Dougal Boyle house and property. They purchased the land, they purchased the house, and of course it was kind of cheap those days to purchase all those things, so they purchased that. And while they were selling goods to eat for the house, they also had land for sale. But they purchased all his land, and they sold it out in sections so people could build on it. So I would say that the garage was the Doyle's land, garage in West Ayrshire, where possibly Dave Fortnall lives was also Doyle's land. Where Doody lives, that was Doyle's land. And there was land leading into the woods. The place that is at La Prairie à Doyle. I'll speak to you about that later on. But there was land in many quarters, so the co-op store, the best sales they ever made was to sell the land, not the goods for the houses or for private use, So that's how the cooperative, so it must have been started in 1937. What is it, the 60th anniversary you said?
Yeah, 1937.
1937 is fun. Not long after that they formed the credit union. And the credit union was little money you could get and put it in. And the Gerroir had difficulty with their own credit union, and they thought if they could get other communities to join them, they might be able to form a credit union that would be more acceptable, that there would be more money they would have. So we joined Petit de Gras. Irish had the credit union, they joined Petit de Gras. Is that enough on co-ops? And Father Farah was possibly one of the leading figures in the co-op movement in the Diocese of Antigonish, and he was awarded a doctorate, more or less in thanks for his work he had done for the co-op movement. Doctorate in law. You might get that one day, you already have it likely. It's a Bachelor of Laws that you're working for.
No, that's my brother.
But you're not going into that, you're going teaching?
I'm not sure. Maybe.
Any other questions on the cooperative?
No, it's fine.
So the only thing is that when you give up and you pass it on to others, the things that communities, we've learned, the past communities should be able to have everything that is needed for people to live by themselves, you know.
Mm.
If you have 300 families, we should have a credit union of our own, we should have a co-op store of our own, and we should have many things of our own, a post office, and a school, you know. All that is disappearing from West Ayrshire. We're not keeping up to what we learn in books. And the one that I admire would be Loosedale. Loosedale has a school, has a co-op store, has a credit union, you know. West Ayrshire all has gone by the road. Did a grow. There's some. All right, I better shut up. What else would you?
No, you were talking also about the businesses in the community as well. There must have been other stores, like general stores and that in the community.
I found Mrs. LeBlanc's history very good. She indicated where, now, usually this would follow the harbour pretty well. You know, this is the harbour. Water here, it goes that way. Then little coves here and there. And there was a wharf right at the entrance, which was a government wharf. And then inside this little cove there was Isidore Poirier's wharf. But there was somebody with a store there before Isidore Poirier. And I think it was a terrier, she's mentioned it here. Commerce, that possibly we have it. The first store that ever existed in West Ayrshire was built over 75 years ago by Mr. Ben Terrio, a citizen of this place. Now this was written in 1911. 75 years ago. What would that have been? 18 what?
75 years ago from
1911.
1911?
1811? 1911. Subtract 75 from 1911.
I can't do it. I'm an art student.
1845?
1836.
Alright, now you're good. So then, that's what he should have said. 136 years ago, if she had been writing, that's what she says. But in my age, when I read it, it's more than 75 years ago. It was located where Captain Isidore Poirier now lives, and there Mr. Terrio dealt in fish and supplied the fishermen with groceries and fishing gear. That would be the outer wharf is there, and the inner wharf is, it's not far from the Baudet on this side. And this is kind of a secret, you know. Isidore wasn't the cleanest person in the world, you know. So, I don't know if that was the reason that the store didn't persevere in serving the people. When Isidore purchased the property, the store disappeared as well. Now, whether they moved elsewhere, I don't know. But there was a store right there connected with that wharf. Short time after, Mr. William Creighton planted another, a similar business on the dike at the entrance of the harbour exactly. Dike is a beach, I think. At the entrance of the harbour. There you have it, there. You see, there's a hole in the middle of the dig.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, the government wharf is there. See the long point there. Oh, unfortunate with that picture. And that's what they call a dike, would be like a beach. Right where the hole is, that's where the store was. They took gravel there to build the road between here and Loosedale when they built it, to pave it. Alright, a short time after, Mr. Creighton, who lived at the end of that point, planted another similar business on the dike at the entrance of the harbour, exactly where his son Henry now resides. See? When she wrote this, people were living there. This last took his father's business, but before long became insolvent, and today there's no sign of business. He went bankrupt. All right. A few years subsequent to his starting to business, Mr. Ben Terrio took as a partner a man from Miramichi, New Brunswick, by the name of William Quinn. But in the course of several years, a disagreement occurred, which occasioned the latter to establish a work for himself. So he started another store where Michael Gerroir-July lives and dealt in merchandise of all kinds. Michael Gerroir. Jeez, me, where you can find that fellow. Yeah, Michael. I mentioned Michael, that was predecessor of my mother. That would be somewhere in that area. You know, I would presume that it took place. Mr. Thériault, then old, feeble, unable to carry on his business himself, rented his building to Mr. MacDonald from Montreal, who for a number of years carried on commerce, but finally, through bad management failed. Soon after, a Jerseyman, Mr. Peter Baudet, now this is the fellow, started a fishing and grocery business at Baudet's Point, which at his death was left to one of his sons, Peter Klein. The latter successfully managed it until 3 years ago, when he suddenly died, leaving his property to 2 young children under the direction of Mr. C.P. Lacheur, or Le Lacheur. The business is beautifully located to the best accommodation of fishermen and opposite the government wharf. Besides managing P.C. Baudet's business, Mr. Lacheur holds the office of custom and the telephone office. But their wharf, that's opposite the government wharf, is here. On the other side, it sets almost in the current that comes from Port Royal, you know, la digue de Laurier. Jusque la digue de Laurier. It faces Amédée Lavange's house. It's not on that picture there. It's a long beach, and there's a strong current, so it was just, the wharf was, if not in the current, not far from it. You want to hear more?
No, that's alright for that.
See, now, any unimportant Lacheur.
If you want to read on, go ahead.
All right, Monsieur Emile Mouchette was one of the first teachers, started the general store in 1862, where Captain Ben Lavange is now living. What soon erected is building a few yards from the church, where he is now the post office. Valiant and thrifty, he successfully managed his business until November 1890, when he died, his remains being interred in West Ayrshire. There you have it. There's more, though. But that's kind of an answer to what you asked. And, of course, there was plenty of fish.
Yeah, speaking about that, about fish, what do you remember about the industry? Like, how has it changed from now where there's virtually none till to the days where virtually none?
I haven't much good to say about fish, you know. Even in my time, I used to go with Raymond fishing. He'd come ashore with a boatload of fish, and you couldn't get a cent and a half a pound for what sells today for almost $5 a pound. That would be haddock. We didn't appreciate fish. Of course, we had to take all that fish, dig a big hole in the field somewhere and bury it and use it later on as fertilizer for gardens, build a compost. And the war, I remember he was fishing herring also, was telling him to gut the herring and wake up early in the morning, work at that all day, and fall asleep almost gutting the herring, and you had to put them in water and scrape it and put more water. And it was kind of discouraging. And I remember Raymond saying it's only a war that could bring things back to something sensible. Same fall 1939 war was declared. I hope he wasn't the cause of starting the war, but it did improve. And according to writings of Jean Cartier, you could almost walk on the water by walking on the back of fish that floated in the waters. You know, you didn't need the ferry at all. You could walk from Port of West to North Sydney and just walk on the back of herring, mackerel, cod, beaming with fish. And of course, the areas where fish was in abundance would be the banks. Banks would be where the water is not as deep as elsewhere. Pretty deep yet, but not as deep. And there might be more for food for fish on those banks. So the Grand Banks would be an area. they've got many other banks and Baccarat and things like that there. That would be good spots where fish could be caught. George's. George's banks would be pretty close to where the dividing line between Canada and the United States is. It would be south of Yarmouth somewhere. Did I answer somewhat? There was plenty of fish, no money for it. And then a big fish plant came and settled themselves in Petit de Gras that occupied, that, you know, it gave labor to quite a few people and all of Almaden. And then all of a sudden they said no more, and they dismantled the plant and all that. And some people are kind of angry about that. There are other fish plants doing fairly well. They just scrapped everything in Petit de Gras. Canso is doing quite well on fish that they get from Shelburne somehow. They come very likely from Russian trawlers. And Pinion Seafood is alive, as far as I know. They think that they've closed shop too soon, and the fish was still available some other way than like the old way of getting it.
Now, what about the church in West Ayrshire? There was a fire there. I believe it was in the 40s. And that church caught fire in West Ayrshire.
This one? The
Yes.
last.
Now, before that, it had design almost similar to the church in Ayrshire. There was like the inside of it. What do you remember of that church?
I think there's one in the kitchen there. Would you go in the kitchen? Where the zinc facing outside and turn your head left. Is that a picture of a church hanging? Where's he at?
No, I believe it's here. It's okay. Stay there.
No, you're going the wrong way. Over the zinc. Turn to the left. Turn your head to the left. Look up.
Yes.
Is that a church?
Yeah.
Well, bring it here and you can have a picture from your camera. That's the church that burnt. This is the church that burnt.
Okay, a little higher.
Bill, stay when?
That's good.
Okay, that's good.
It might have been built in 1870. All right, but I'll tell you the story about the church. The first pastor came here in 1863. And at the same time they sent a pastor here, the church, the parish was erected as a parish. And the first pastor was Hubert Gerroir, and he was Tracadie. Related to me, we belong to the same group. We're waiting for you to come back.
That's okay.
Sometimes I get stuck. And all right, this summer I went to Saint Anne de Beaupré, and we went over the bridges to Quebec, and then we had dinner at Sainte Foy, which is the west of Quebec. And then a guide stepped aboard the bus and explained to us as we came closer to Quebec, and then we went on to Saint Anne de Beaupré. So we went through Sillery. I was interested in Sillery because I knew an old priest that used to come to Ayrshire. His name was Father he was Broussard. His sister was named Broussard. Anyhow, that's why he trained as a Marist. He belonged to the Society of Mary, and we called these Marist. And it was a Sillery. He did his college course. And then, of course, across the river we saw Lévis. And afterwards we came to Quebec, and we went around the old city, went in the area where the old seminary was at. And it's at that seminary that Hubert Gerroir went to school to become a priest. He was there in the small seminary, which is the equivalent of college, and the Grand Séminaire, which is the equivalent of which training you will should become a priest. And he was there about 9 years, and then before he was told to go back home. He was ordained and sent back home. Before he went home, he served 6 months in Livy, in the parish in Livy. And then he came to Arishat, and he was named pastor of the cathedral in Arishat, and one of the first priests who acted as professors at St. FX. St. FX was founded in about that time. And so, with time, St. FX, who was to look after St. FX? To start the college, you need people who are fairly well educated. They should have doctorates. Few of them at least should have doctorates. And Father Gerroir's opinion was it would be better to invite a religious congregation like the Jesuits, the Redemptorists, or any order, even the Frères des Écoles Chrétiennes. Invite such people who would take care of the college, provide the personnel, the teaching personnel. And the bishop's view was that it would be better if they could get enough vocations to send these priests to Rome to study to become priests a year or two later, and before coming home would be able to obtain doctorates from these universities, and then that they would be full-fledged, they would belong to the diocese, and they would be able to act as professors. So there was some kind of a dispute between Gerroir and the bishop, so the bishop told Gerroir that he had founded a new parish and he was to be the first pastor, so he got Gerroir out of Arishat, out of the way, and the pastor was Arishat. So there's a mixture, there are news of St. FX and news of the first pastor. So he came here, and I suppose there was more people living along the harbor here than there were further on. But of course there was Port Royal, who had a lot of sailing people there too, and had sailing vessels. So anyhow, there was a dispute just where the church should be built. We wanted to build it in a central place. And there was a division in the parish. Gerroir couldn't get anywhere, so Gerroir was told that he would have a replacement. Another priest would take his place. And this priest came from Chrétien, I think, but he originally came from Quebec. His name was Louis Rameau Fournier. And one Sunday he said that he's ready to give his life if in 30 days there wasn't some kind of an agreement as to where the church would be built, an agreement that the church would be built. He was ready to give his life. In 30 days, Fournier was dead. And the bishop who buried him pronounced him a saint, I don't know at what time they decided to go ahead and build a church, but it's because of that event that they thought was kind of miraculous. They should shut up and get together and build a church. So this church might have been built in 1870. So the parish was founded in 1863. But there was a lapse of time there. And with all respect to the miracle, the church is no more central where they built it than it, it's not central at all. The gentleman's arbor is about 9 miles further out. It might have been more central in Bras-Sainte-Marie somewhere. Am I furnishing an answer to your question?
Yes. Go on if you wish.
Then I have a list of all the pastors. You don't like all the long list, do you? But they're about to unveil a monument to the memory of Father Toussaint. But we had...
When is that?
I don't know when, but it's coming up pretty soon, I guess. It's the monument is put up and there's covering on it. So I'll just go through these. We were part of the Arishat parish from 1786 to August 1863. We were a mission of Arishat. Father Jean B. Allant was Arishat between 1798 and 1808. Now there was no parish, it was Arishat. Now the first pastor named here, or the former parish, was Hubert Gerroir. In 1863, he built a convent, brought a congregation nuns to the parish, brought brothers to the parish, named Little Arishat changed to Acadiaville by law, and Father Malboir Turcot supplied, or was here for about a few months. The next pastor was Louis Ramon Fournier, the fellow who was to give his life, offered life for settlement of disagreement, buried in Ayrshire. He was proclaimed a saint. And when you go to the vestry door to go to the Ayrshire church, they push the door to get in, the inner door.
It's in the back. It's behind that. It's behind the
Back
church.
of that door, that the monument of Fournier is erected, supposed to be a saint. So you got problems, you can pay him a little visit once in a while. The other one is Joseph Samuel Racine, procured lumber and prepared site of the church, was buried on site of the church. Racine, that's the body they found when they excavated to build a new church there. They found the body of a priest. And the next one is Joseph Etienne Etier, built the church. Pierre Forgeron, first native ordained. Pierre Forgeron came from Port Royal way, was ordained, and he was pastor for a while. Guillaume William, that's William for Guillaume. Talbot, Immaculate Conception Church, Bless. Fire destroyed presbytery and records, so we have records missing. The house was burnt in 1881, so we have records from 1881, 82. It was in July 81 that it burnt. Father Talbot joined Trappist as Father Joseph, so Father Talbot, who had been there prior, did I mention the Talbot? Talbot. Anyhow, Father Talbot became a Trappist. The monastery long ago was a Trappist monastery. Today it's an Augustinian. Louis P. Ernest Nadeau built presbytery, repaired the church. Father Hubert Gerroir died at Havre-Boucher. Father J. Etier was drowned at Valley Field. Father Joseph died at monastery, and parishioners subscribed 1,300 to retain nuns. That was 1886. We were ready to lose the nuns then, but then they subscribed a certain sum of money to keep them. Phileas Frederic Bourgeois was a Holy Cross priest here for a short time. Pierre Forgeron, named West Ayrshire. The name West Ayrshire began to be used in the 80s. Pierre Forgeron was here for 1 year. Alexander Beaton, the first time he came, the story is a constable took refuge in the presbytery. It's kind of weird, eh? Constable, he was maintaining order. And the elderly fellow forced him to take refuge in the presbytery. It's somewhere in the story there. Anyhow, Amand Blavaris Mavoket, this would be old Father Mavoket, was pastor here for about 1 year. Gedeon Beliveau was pastor for another year, and here's Dr. Neil McNeil was here from 1891 to 1893. He became the first bishop of Cornerbrook, Newfoundland, and then Archbishop of Vancouver, and then Archbishop of Toronto. And he died in 1934. I remember that when he died. And why West Ayrshire, as a fellow was very interested in it, because I found out that he had been pastor here for some time. And U. Peter McPherson, congregation nuns, withdrew from the parish in 1894. Now, H.P. McPherson became rector of St. X. The old rector, have you heard of that man? He was parish priest in West Ayrshire for a while. So because your mother or your father, no, your mother from whose state?
No, my father's mother is a Euro. Was a Euro from Port Royal.
Oh yeah, your father.
My father's mother, yeah.
Yeah. You should have special favors granted. You might get your doctor in law, or whatever it is in education. So Alexander Beaton came back for the second time. I might as well give you all this. And then came Joseph Edouard Robitaille in 1900. Father Robitaille stayed here 26 years or so. And it was this time that Charles J. Fora was ordained. And Robitaille was recalled into Antigonish to look after the Mount Cameron farm. Now, do you hear those words in Antigonish at times? Mount Cameron Farm. Is there a farm still going on, or I think it belongs to Vex? And the bishop-
Yeah, I think that's where the biology students go. Sometimes they go on field trips and that.
Yeah.
I think that's what that is.
Well, this is Father Robitaille was asked to be manager of that affair, and I think the college would go there and get things for themselves without making those in charge what they had taken away. So he couldn't keep a record of what was going on, so he quit. He came back to the stair shack. In the meantime, Father Meyer replaced him. Another priest came here, Aimable of Briand. And this is where, under Aimable Briand, Archbishop Neil McNeil died in Toronto. We have this listed about that time, in 34. Father Ernest Nadeau died in Quebec. West Irish Credit Union organized in 1936. West Irish Cooperative Store in 1937. West Irish and Rosedale experiment for scientific cutting and marketing of pulp wood was undertook at that time, at the beginning of the war. We were accused of cutting pulpwood for Germany that might be coming back to us in the form of bullets. They'd be throwing the pulpwood back at us. It was just when the war was about to start. So then we have Albert Doucette, and there's my name there, third parishioner ordained in 1945. The Fille de Jésus came to teach here in 53. And Ronald Forgeron, fourth parishioner ordained. The Fille de Jésus moved to Ayrshire Convent. He continued to teach at Acadiaville School till the school closed. On Thanksgiving night, the Immaculate Conception Church was destroyed by fire, October 1976. That's that church you saw a while ago. The construction of the new church started August 1977. Plans and drawn by the 18-year-old of the parish who had natural architectural abilities. First Mass, a wedding Mass celebrated by Reverend Daniel Doucette in 1978. Bishop William E. Powell officiated at the blessing of the new church in 1978. Reverend Father Jean-Baptiste Lacoste replaced Father Albert Doucette during his illness, and Father Albert Doucette passed away 21st of December 1978. So we had next pastor was Father Jean-Baptiste Lacoste, the missionary of White Fathers of Africa. On leave agreed to remain as administrator until a priest be assigned. Bill Burke named pastor of Immaculate Conception Church, named also administrator of St. Hyacinth in the schools. Alan McMillan, pastor of Immaculate Conception Parish and administrator of St. Hyacinth in the schools. Joseph Cote, pastor of Immaculate Conception Parish, and Conrad Gerroir, named administrator of Immaculate Conception Parish at the advanced age of 77. You want a copy of this? And you want a copy of this? Where is this?
You mean the history here? This?
Well, I wouldn't be able to give that one away, but I have the other one. If you want to copy it and bring it back to me, you may have it.
Yeah, I think I think they'd be interested because it's for the Historical Society. They run the forge.
Are you at the forge?
Well, I don't work through the forge, but they run the forge and they're in charge of our grants. And they got a bunch of
this is the one.
doing different
Now,
stuff.
this is the one that's leaning towards the church more than the other one there. But the other one shows things I didn't know about stoves there. So you're going to take it, is it?
Well,
And you'll furnish me a copy or two.
I guess so.
Wouldn't be
I've,
nice.
Yeah.
Not so much.
I'll ask my mother.
Here,
To make sure we can. Sure we can get it.
Who's your boss in all this?
Well, my mother's sort of in charge, but it's mainly the organization itself.
Yeah. Who else is in the?
Be Joel Bone. Be
Jean Bona.
Jean Bona.
Jim Bona was born. Where is he from?
She's from Rocky Bay, I think.
Yeah.
Jean Bona. Bona from the Scouse.
Yeah. She married Roddy Bona.
Yeah, Bona's here too in Port Royal. So, what about my essay? Do you want to have a copy too? Maybe I've got one already. I have it in French, but I think English might be. So, I would like to at least mention what's on this.
Okay, we can finish with that.
Are you finished with this affair?
No, you can finish with that.
Finish with this, all right. When speaking to the bishop of the good port we have in Point Tupper, he's not impressed because he's under the idea that the best port in Nova Scotia is Halifax. He was brought up there. You're not going to beat me at that. So what I was able to procure was this Department of Mines map and the straight line from Cape Chignecto comes out in Chattahoochee Bay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where Africa was attached to Nova Scotia. And there was only one continent that became Pangaean continent.
Continental drift.
I mean, where did you learn that, you people?
In school.
High school.
High school.
Is it old now that schools speak of those things, or
It's
more
a
or less
fairly new
recent?
concept.
Yeah.
All right.
It's like an RPO.
One large continent, and then it began to break. And if you want to make a nice jig puzzle possibly for Christmas coming, that would be just as popular as that bird up there, right above your head. The bird talks and repeats everything you say. It would be to cut the continents of the world today, cut them out from a map, and have them put them together, and you would come with the Pangaean continent, and you'll have the little marks of separation.
Mhm.
So I was able to produce that map, and he said, "Where in the world did you get that map?" I spoke to Priest about it. He wanted to know where in the world you get such a nice map. I said, "I got it from the Department of Mines." Department of Mines. So, and even people are not too, for us it's more or less taken for granted those big boats come here because it's the place to come. But I doubt if we have too many political people who are versed on this, who know about it, I think one of them did, and it was Alan J. McAckman, because of all the industries he brought to Point Tupper. We've lost two, is it? Heavy water and the refinery. They were not just by chance that he was insisting that we build there. We have the best harbor in the world. These big tankers come here, they unload, and then it's distributed along the Atlantic seaboard down to Baltimore, where you think that all those big steamers could go and unload there, but no. So I am Conrad. I have to identify myself. This has gone to the internet, so I must identify myself. So I'll give a picture of myself. I am Conrad P. Gerroir, pastor of Immaculate Conception Parish, which takes in Chanfrance Island, you know where that is, Martinique, Port Royal, and West Ayrshire. I forgot St. Mary's. Jean Lejeune is going to be there after me.
You know Jean? Did you go to school to work?
No.
Anyway, so I see sea map of Point Tupper and its accesses. So there's it. Here's the map. Point Tupper is about there. This is the east side of the Strait of Canso. Chanfrance Island is here. And this is another deep trench that meets the other trench that goes there. There's the trench of the Strait of Canso that extends there. So we are the east bank of that important harbor, right at home. And one area of great interest, so back to read. In 1935, I completed my grade 11 in West Ayrshire and went from there to complete my studies at St. Francis Xavier University in Antigonish, where I obtained my BA in 1939. One of my courses while at university was geology, an interest which still follows me to this day. This area of the Diocese of Antigonish, which covers the 7 eastern counties of Nova Scotia, is filled with very interesting geological features worthy of serious research. One area of great interest is Point Tupper, with its incredible water depths and its anchorages. A straight line running from Cape Chignecto to Passborough, Truro, Giants Lake, Salmon River, and Chattahoochee Bay marks the juncture where Africa was attached to Nova Scotia, that is, to North America, millions of years ago. That's just that map. One proof of this can easily be seen in the map to the left. Map to the left here. Another proof is that of the topography and geology itself of the area. North of the aforementioned straight line is black granite, while on the south side of the line is limestone and sandstone. This rare black granite is the same as that found in Morocco in North Africa. Many millions of years ago, we had just one continent, see Pangaea. Now, if you look at the internet for Pangaea, they speak of this big continent, which eventually broke up, the various parts drifting in various directions to form the continents that we know today. The result, a fault, the Chattahoochee Fault. It's deep. Where this piece of Africa, they speak of colliding there, which makes Chattahoochee Bay at that particular area much deeper than the rest of the bay. And there's another fault or trench, the Strait of Canso, which meets the Chattahoochee Fault, making the depth along these two faults at least 100 feet at low tide. It is well known by residents of the area, mostly fishermen, would refer to the middle of Chattahoochee Bay as bottomless. A cable of 400 feet could hardly touch bottom, and that would be between Petit Gros and Canso there. It gets that deep, and then it gets deeper as you go towards the continental shelf. And in 1929 there was an earthquake. In 1927 there was an earthquake felt here pretty strongly. And the epicenter, as you mentioned, of the earthquake was on this fault, and 26 people drowned in Newfoundland from the tidal wave. And they say that one man was taken adrift, not far from the hospital of the Strait Richmond. The tidal wave would come, and if you have a gully that forms this way, the water will rise much higher when it comes at the end of the grabbed this fellow and they took him away. And I don't know how sure that is. As a result of this fault, we are fortunate to have one of the best deep harbor ports in the world. In the case of this parish, to have Janvans Island across from Eddy Point, Sand Point, as the northeastern bank of this big harbor. It fills one with pride and with great joy to have a 300,000 ton VLCC, very large crude carrier vessel, slip by one's doorway on its way to Point Tupper. Looks like an island navigating through. And if you go to Janvans Harbor, you don't know Amédée Fougère, c'est Amédée. Andrew is married to Carol George, I think. We lost our fisheries in recent years, but we have a marvelous world-class harbor thanks to Chattahoochee Fault with good depth of water. And we don't have to dig it, it's already being done naturally. That's what they're going to do, Montreal, they're going to do to take the container ships, We have the rail, we have the depth, we can take in these monsters. And they want to increase the size of the container ships. Do you agree to that, or am I building false stories? The Canso Causeway has transformed the Atlantic end of the Strait of Canso, from the causeway this way, into the deepest ice-free port on the east coast of North America. The port can accommodate supertankers of 500,000 tons DWT. They don't need to increase the depth of them, but just widen them for 40 feet wider. You can imagine the tonnage they can bring in one load. The well-protected harbour and its moderate tide activity also facilitates bulk cargo transshipment from self-loaders to super colliers for shipment to world markets. And I'm told that the paper that's shipped from the paper mill in Pictou is taken by rail to Point Tupper, was taken there somehow, and is shipped from Point Tupper. It's loaded on these big ships if it goes quite a long distance, super tankers. As a common user base, the port provides onshore facilities for exploration activity, only 117 nautical miles from Sable Island gas fields. The port can accommodate drill rigs for service and maintenance operations, manufacture items, fish and seafood, pulp and newsprint, aggregates that goes by 2 million of tons. Thus would be the crushed gravel from Cape Porcupine, the aggregates. All products, Saudi Arabia is moving to Point Tupper. Gypsum, that comes from Little Narrows, I suppose, shipped to Point Tupper. Other break bulk cargo, meaning that they could provide different items in a big cargo. Other advantages to the port: moderate temperatures, currents that are generally less than 0.3 knots, with predicted extreme current at 1 knot. There used to be a strong current in the Strait of Cancel before they built the causeway. Average tide rises 0.7 meters and falls 0.6 meters, with water depths of more than 37 meters. That's in the strait itself now. When you go out, it's deeper. And now it has rail access. That's what I don't like, is they're selling the railroad beds. They've removed the rails, etc., and they're selling the railroad beds in order that people can recreate with 4-wheelers and 3-wheelers. The first thing is that they may be doing the same thing, the line going to Sydney. And we're cutting off our chances of being a container port. And now it has rail access with Cape Breton and Central Nova Scotia Railway, which connects in Truro to main Canadian National Line to Central Canada and United States markets. I shouldn't lose that. In conclusion, having spent 52 years in the priesthood and Diocese of Antigonish and all the rest of my life in this area, I would like to make better known what I know to be one of the greatest natural values of this area, one of the best areas in the world. If you have any information, please write to me, back to the top, and that's my address. Internet. And of course, I'm not using my own internet. I'm using a website, web door of Ronnie Gerard. Ron, R-O-N-G-A-R-D in the corner. So I present you with this.
Alright, I have one. Okay.
Oh, we got one? Okay, good.
Okay, well that's everything.
And even if you were to supply me with some of those copies, would it be possible too?
Well, I'm gonna see what I can do. I think my brother should have access to it because he works in Oxbridge.
So see, if your brother,
This is the house of Father Gerroir in his surrounding yard.